dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to say it's a great, sincere privilege for me to be with you here today. Thank you. The Seoul Municipal Government is leading the way in discussions and visions for fair and sustainable tourism. Building on the Seoul Declaration of 2016, which I carry with me, not just today, but every day, and the travelling concept presented so wonderfully of the travelling citizen and the campaign related to it, your discussions and collaborations on urban tourism. Because of all of this and much more, we are here today, I'm here today, and we are looking forward to the future, inspired by the debates and discussions that you've held already. I and many other people and organisations across the world respect you for these visionary initiatives. And in the spirit of respect, I want to share some fundamental pathways for our common futures. I'd ideally like to have a conversation with you, so we can share ideas, but I'm constrained. But I hope as we progress that you are feeling that you're part of the conversation, and we can continue that both mentally and spiritually after today. Across communities, countries in our world, we stand at a crossroads. Through the internationally agreed United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the agreements of COP21 in Paris, both in 2015, clear, unambiguous statements of the UN Framework and Convention on Climate Change, we have clear, unambiguous agreement that we must transform our social and economic practice and our fundamental relationships with our environment, with our nature, with our commons. Tourism is one of the most important industries of today's world. Quite simply, it has to be key and a key part of this transformation. Tourism must transform, and we, everyone here, we all need to be part of this transformation. I will outline the importance of establishing a commitment by all of us here today, and everyone else who is part of tourism, who is not here today, to actively embrace transforming tourism, and so be part of contributing to the just, equal, inclusive, and environmentally respectful social and economic practices. This is a major and vital change. And I stress, it is not a campaign. I stress, it is not a new niche product. I'm urging you to adopt this as the core of your planning, your policies, your laws, and your practice of tourism from now and going forward. We are all travellers, hosts, guests, communities, businesses, local and urban municipalities and governments. We are all citizens, and you have shared with us fair travel citizens. I call on us all to be part of building just green tourism, and we'll share some key suggestions on how we can do this. So, as Louis has said already, why tourism? You know the answer. It is a tenth of the jobs on this planet and a tenth of global GDP. Could tourism be a stepping stone for a peace economy? I would say it must be. To do so, it will need to commit to being being at the heart of significantly more just, equal and inclusive economic and social relations. More equal and inclusive societies are more peaceful. We have twin challenges. Climate and environmental change, simple response. Complex and difficult one. We need the vital need for climate justice and just transitions. And secondly, growing social and economic inequality, which is often linked to exclusion within and between countries. Our response: the vital need for just, equal and inclusive social and economic relations within communities and within and between countries. To progress towards a peace economy, we urgently and comprehensively need to transform our social relations and economic practices and our respect for our environments. Tourism could be at the heart of these changes, of this transformation. However, currently, tourism poses a number of fundamental challenges. At present, and it's necessary to say, mass and commercialized tourism is strongly linked, unbiblically, someone might say at present, to growing consumption, growing use of fossil fuels, relatively poor paid and often insecure work, limited full-time, part-time and seasonal workers' rights, limited or sadly often no consultation with governments by host communities. The Berlin Declaration on Transforming Tourism, which I am a part of, summarised the challenges. Currently, tourism's negative effects are felt directly or indirectly by the majority of the world's population. Apologies. This raises questions about justice. Its unchecked growth is exacerbated by widespread poor management and inadequate regulation of international, national and local levels. This widens existing inequalities, exploits workforces, displaces communities, commodifies cultures, depletes national resources, and threatens future generations. The rights of women, children, minority and indigenous people are particularly vulnerable to the current tourism dynamic. This was one of the conclusions of and part of the Berlin Declaration, which brought together tourism practitioners from across the world. In responding to these challenges, priority must be given to poor, excluded and marginalised people, or democratic and accountable institutions must be in place to assure that processes and measures can lead to more just, equal and inclusive and sustainable countries and communities. These measures need to be based on respect for gender equality and promotion and protection of human, economic and socio-cultural rights, environmental security and the protection of our economies. What is this in practice? I can share with you at great length, but this is an example of village-level consultation in Kerala directly related to the local political structures. These consultations are part of local government governance. So, if we're looking to transform tourism, we have to bear in mind the challenges of our global context. I'm confident that everyone in this room, young and old, know these, what I'm going to share with you. But I have to reassert this in the context of our discussions today. When to start? What does the World Meteorological Organization say? Maybe you can't see this graphic, but it is a fundamental summary this year by the World Meteorological Organization of the current situation of the desecration and destruction of our environment and of our climate structure in many countries, and a global summary of this. I urge you to absorb this. The time for change is quite simply now and onwards. There was a very famous and respected Indian philosopher, environmental activist, who says quite simply, to make peace among people, we need to make peace with the earth. The signs are loud and clear from the earth, from science, from women, from children, from indigenous communities, from our daily lives. The life on this planet and our future is under severe threat. An economy that destroys our home is no longer an economy. It is a war against the people and our future. And these are the profound words of Vandana Shiva. Now this is the second area I want to stress, where we have some essential necessary changes, which will be happening. These will be happening, and and tourism has to respond and be part of the context of this. Subsidies on fossil fuels. I was astounded in a sense by the context of Louis' presentation that the current subsidies on fossil fuels are 3 times our military expenditure globally, 3 times. The International Monetary Fund, in its recent report in May this year, says that in 2017 it estimates that $5.2 trillion are the current subsidies on fossil fuels. 6.5% of our global gross domestic product. About 3/4 of global subsidies are due to domestic factors and policies. And coal and petroleum together account for 85% of global subsidies. Efficient fossil fuel pricing in 2015 would have lowered global carbon emissions by 28%, and fossil fuel air pollution deaths by 46%, and increased government revenue by 3.8%. These are the words and summaries of the International Monetary Fund. Structural changes many predict will happen soon. Tourism will have to respond or even be ahead of these changes. Then, the second major point is the challenges of growing social and economic inequality and exclusion. UNCTAD, the OECD, and the World Inequality Report summarise quite clearly the overall gap between rich and poor is widening, and access to resources, livelihood opportunities, and essential public services remains grossly unequal. Within countries, absolute income equality is increasing and has done since the mid-1970s. The OECD report, which South Korea is a member of, a very proud member of, in 2015 states that income inequality is higher than it ever has been in OECD countries. Quite simply, the social inequalities remain very significant, and the most significant of these is the gender gap. At the current rate of progress, it will take another 108 years to reach gender parity, according to the World Economic Forum, most recent gender gap report. I am a founder member, and have been since 1996, of the Asia Europe People's Forum, which has been held at the People's Forum here in 2000, partly in the context of the ASEAN Summit in the year 2000 in Seoul. Our last declaration, which we passed in October 2018, stated, there is a widespread and growing sense that the inequalities across Asia and Europe are creating now more than ever insiders and outsiders from concentrations of power and wealth. Fractured economies have consolidated diverse and polarizing politics. The growth of racism and xenophobia is toxifying social relations and contributing to already pronounced democratic deficits. In a significant number of countries, there is a perceived and dangerous shrinking of democratic and civic spaces. This context affects us all, and it is this context that tourism has to address its necessary transformations. Other areas which you know only too well: plastic use and waste management, the absence of reduce, reuse, recycle widely, the consumption patterns locked into economic growth, and pollution and premature deaths due to toxic air. I'm afraid I come from a city, London, where air pollution, so in the country as a whole, has caused, wait for this, 64,000 deaths in 2015, including 170 fatal cases of heart and artery disease. This amounted to reducing the average life expectancy in my country, and therefore potentially my life, by 1.5 years. Air pollution. And the last area I want to share with you is challenge of flying. Aviation has the fastest rising emissions of any industry and is the top 10 polluters on the planet. Every flight you take massively increases your carbon footprint. Even if you take measures to live sustainably, a single flight can wipe out other savings. At the moment, aviation enjoys massive tax rates, and alternative forms of transport are often prohibitively expensive. As I said earlier, it is highly likely and necessary that subsidies on fossil fuels will decrease. They have to. It's part of the Paris Agreement. It's part of the commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This will affect flying. This will affect aviation. There are already campaigns in many countries about one flight a year. So, subsidies will go, flying will be less, and again, this doesn't mean it won't happen, but flying with a purpose. Like in so many other areas, we will be focusing more on quality and purpose as opposed to quantity. So I give these examples not to repeat what you already know, but to say that tourism has been a tenth of global GDP, will have to respond and be part to these situations as they evolve and change, and I strongly suggest today must be at the heart of actually providing positive alternatives. Be ahead, looking to the future. Our fundamental changes moving forward, as you already know, are the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the Framework of Climate Change Convention and its agreements in Paris in 2015. I humbly include in the list and respectfully your conferences here, your decisions here in 2016, 17 and 18. Globally, these are important. Cherish them and build on them. The Seoul Declaration on Fair Tourism is a part of that process. And the Berlin Declaration on Transforming Tourism, I urge you to share and enjoy. I won't go through all these because you know this. But this, as Louis suggested, no one is left behind, becomes important. There is a burning and strong wish across the world for change. Famously, it's now personified by Rutherford for 3 minutes, just halfway. Okay, I will proceed. Apologies. So I will talk quickly and briefly. I was going to talk about the Declaration. I'm going to talk about that. We'll focus on power and consultation, the Declaration. The key point which I think we have to focus on is the perceptions of power that come from a sense of entitlement. This is a strong and pervading attitude which at present is also toxifying tourism in many ways. And this will be part of our change and our relationship as tourism travellers. And the other link to that is being beyond extractivism. We have to rethink our relationship with nature, and from relationships that are taking without turning extractivism to ones that are sustainable, based on restoring, renewing, and retention. Sorry, a fantastic example in Ireland. And you've talked many times about the need for participation. And these women are on a cooperative of homestays in India. So I will move on to pass forward. I'm making the assumption that we are all travellers, hosts, guests, workers, taxpayers, I hope, and we all breathe and wish to be healthy and enable better communities and countries for future generations. We all wish to be fair travel citizens, and we want to contribute to decent economies. Quite simply, tourism is not an island. It's not isolated from the economy and our lives. We are all interlinked, and we should all be the active citizens that Seoul has suggested. That includes me. I will respectfully, hopefully you remember your strong statements in fair travel citizens. So the foundations for social and environmental peace are just, equal and inclusive and environmentally respectful tourism. To break this down, for more just tourism and travel, quite simply should be, these are all shoulds and hopes, be fairly traded, be transparently and accountably priced, provide decent, fairly paid work, should recognise and support workers' rights to organise and associate. Transparency about workers' pay and conditions should be shared and able to be shared with guests and host communities. Correct, full and timely payment of local and national employment taxes. And I urge you all to develop and be part of what's called a fair tax mark. Also to work with as many local suppliers as possible. Use organically produced and processed food. Use ethical fabrics and clothing. And use environmentally friendly materials. This is an example of a place I stayed earlier this year, a homestay in Kerala, run by an organic farmer who is part of a cooperative association in this village, integrating fair, transparent and ethical tourism into daily lives and livelihoods. They're also members of the local tourism committee of the local government. Again, hands-on helping me. I can't share this with you now, but the principles of the company that we're part of has established complete supply chain transparency. Complete supply chain transparency and sharing that with all our customers and all communities and groups we work with. It's easy. I highly recommend it. And we also are the first tour operator in the UK to be awarded the Fair Tax Mark, which we're very proud of as well. For environmentally respectful tourism and travel, there are many obvious things. It should be carbon neutral, decreasing use of fossil fuel year on year by 2030, increasing the use of renewable energy resources, and a commitment to ending the use of single-use plastic by 2025. It started already by some airlines, believe it or not. There has to be and continue to be no illegal or forced land acquisitions. This is a terrible problem in many countries. And of course, strengthening and contributing to food sovereignty in host communities. This is a wonderful example in Kerala again, where a community have done organic seed banks. They've also, as you'll see later, I hope, developed a recycling process which is scaled up, so now they have a contract to manage the recycling and waste management of Calicut International Airport. So it's not a small fantasy at the local level. It is a viable future for the communities and the local economy. For equal tourism and travel, the SDG 8 commits to promote inclusive and sustainable economies, growth and employment and decent work for all. And we can look at great length, and I hope you're all aware of the 4 pillars of decent work as shared by the ILO. Quite simply, these are ways to enable us to understand and move forward to providing decent and fairly paid work. As part of that, we have to actively commit to closing and making obsolete the gender pay gap. Actively commit to enabling people with disabilities to have decent and fairly paid work. Inclusive tourism necessarily involves the improvement of their conditions for both female and male workers. And positive action for training programs for women and people from marginalised and excluded groups, including people with disabilities. For more inclusive tourism and travel, quite simply, developing and enabling accommodation, transport, services and related information which are accessible and affordable for people with disabilities, accessible for people of all incomes, for people with caring responsibilities, people of all sexual orientations, and people in both urban and rural communities. If you want to leave no one behind, we should really work towards them. This is a very positive example here from South Korea, and the Tourism for Korea campaign and actions which are concretely, again, another positive example. Community tourism we'll talk about much later, but something that's a key part of this. Again, this is a fantastic example from Ireland, from India, Northern India. By the way, next to the left of the tree, in the centre is the homestay. Beautiful. And is run by a cooperative. Community homestays in India, which are related to local social organisations. In our transition, I want to say Korea has started the trend. Green Growth Action and Agenda in Korea, following on from the second financial crisis, developed a national strategy for green growth. You have done a lot of the thinking, you have done a lot of the planning. You even have a green growth strategy that stretches way into the future. You have a Green New Deal, which we talked about earlier this decade. But I humbly suggest that this is work in progress. You have your foundations, but the possibility to take these forward are strong and important potential. So quite simply, what am I going to suggest to you? Quickly, I apologize. Chair, for a little more time, but I'll be very quick now. Tourism, quite simply, is at the heart of economic and social life. Tourism is not an island, as I said earlier. It has to therefore be embrace the changes that are inevitable if, as our planet is in crisis and our social relations need to change, and therefore it should be at the heart and ahead of the changes moving forward. So we're looking at just Green Deal for tourism. Quite simply. And this is not a sector, this is not for one project or one niche moment, it is the aspiration for the whole sector. Otherwise, tourism will be left behind. That will happen. The Seoul Metropolitan Government, our hosts today, said we stand at a turning point where it is now essential to ensure the Seoul Metropolitan Government more proactively manages tourism in the city. This will require a whole-of-government approach, including the tourism department, planning, building, control, transport, environment, and waste management. Only through a whole-government approach can Seoul Metropolitan Government effectively manage tourism to benefit rather than harm local communities and their environment. You have said this already. This is your philosophy, and I humbly and respectfully say this is the basis of the way forward. You are globally in a position to take the lead, and I sincerely and warmly encourage you to seize this opportunity. A just Green Deal for tourism at start is talking about how we plan it and discuss it. Developing just green tourism, transition, multi-year plans at community, municipal and regional levels, combined every from a national plan. These should be based on and informed by community, local host community, inclusive participatory consultations and discussions. The consolidation of these initiatives generated provide the basis of activities for just green tourism, and the establishment of regular municipal just green tourism committees to take forward and monitor progress and be accountable to local citizens. The first step is the democracy of this process. And you have the capacity and vision and practice to be leaders in this process. This is the central foundation that I encourage you, and sincerely encourage you to take this forward over the next 3 years. Now is the time to get the democratic and governance processes in place and take them forward. The remaining points are ones which I've shared already, so they're bringing them together in a clear summary. The Just Jobs transition is essentially how we can expand and develop effective dialogue to bridge those communities, tourism providers and local authorities. This is a way of addressing local economic inequalities, but also implement programs of training and access to training which are widespread and well accessed. For example, in Indonesia, in Java, a very important organisation taking this forward already. You already have talked about this in your just transition plans in South Korea. I just want to stress one extra point here, which is often in creating training processes, we can have these as part of other programs and activities. If there was going to be a wider program of environmental reconstruction, then to tourism can be an integrated part of that. Just green employment and tourism can be linked to other areas of priority sectors, renewable energy, energy conservation, low carbon technologies, and carbon neutral construction. Tourism is rarely a monocrop industry, and a dependence on one source of income, I say sincerely, is always dangerous. As I said earlier, contributing to local food sovereignty, using organically produced processed food, using the ethical fabrics, and the integrated waste management. I'm running quickly, I'm afraid, because my time has been constrained. This is the example, as I said in Kerala, of the integrated waste management, which began from a community association and is now managing for the whole of the international airport and providing advice from other areas in the country. Integrating energy generation and supply is part of the just green tourism. And as someone said, making every building, home, guest house, hotel, a power station, is also another key area which I wish you to think about. Zero carbon construction, again, two visionary examples, prototypes, I know, from South Korea, are also leading the way. You have the technologies here. You have your own urban renewal New Deal. Seoul City Council, Municipal Council, has already begun and progressed significantly in the thinking on this, and you have daily practice on these areas. Lastly, I will say we have to consolidate areas of research and discussion, and finance. Supporting finance can be predominantly through mutual, cooperative and social enterprise mechanisms, and I stress this, municipalities such as Seoul can be catalysts and engines for both innovation and development. As an example in Italy where this has happened through the national park process. Talk to our participation and involvement of local communities. I'm literally finishing, I apologize. Yeah. Underpinning this is, and I apologize 3 times now, so that's very generous of you. Underpinning this are measures to strengthen the institutional capacity of municipalities and urban authorities to deal more effectively with employment and the income effects of sustainable development initiatives. And I strongly urge Seoul municipal authorities to see how they can strengthen and make the municipal capacity more fit for purpose to take this forward. So finally, at last, apologies, where does peace come from? It's a strange question to end on, but I think, as I said before, tourism has to be at the heart of answering this question. It has to be a way which can respond to the current challenges and context both globally and locally, and be a beacon of hope and a way of taking forward this just green tourism for the future. We all have a responsibility to our future generations to embrace this opportunity. We know there must be change and urgency, and I urge you to let's do it together to build a more just, equal and inclusive world. One where we respect our shared environment, our commons. Okay, thank you.